The sun has set, the candles are lit, it is now time for the Creepy Podcast. 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 The sun has set, the candles are lit. It is now time for the Creepy Podcast. The Creepy Podcast, Episode 2, Story 1, The Smiling Man, Improvised Synths by DJ 4AM.
You're smiling, fiddly-dee, a smile on your face, there's smile in your smiling face. There's something about a smile. It can either be the most beautiful, wonderful thing, or the goddamn most fucking scariest shit you've ever seen in your life, and I've definitely seen both of those in my life. Holy cow. There's something about a smile, it's weird. You know, you can see the intent in a smile. So I always I freak out about smiling stuff. Something smiling at me. I don't know about that. I don't like that. Stop it. So this one right here is called The Smiling Man. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite, but all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday. Somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrol in the park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weekend, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. Sounds like 6th Street on a Saturday night, around 3:30 in the morning. It was a strange dance. Yeah, definitely 6th Street. Similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Oh, hell no. No. I don't want no crazy crackhead dance walking at me. No. I am not your partner, homie. I'm not your homie partner. No. No. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing, and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and the sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street, and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he moved fast. So this is a crackhead you're dealing with. Honestly, you live in a bad neighborhood and you don't know what a crackhead is. Okay, that's a crackhead. Yeah, that's a crackhead. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. He might be in a K-hole. Can you run when you're on ketamine? DMT? When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper. Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they certainly can hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. He didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and started walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran so far away. I just ran all night and day. I ran until I was off of the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile. But he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. In fact, I never walked again. I went home and I cut my legs off, and I cauterized the wounds with a hot frying pan. And then I ate my legs to make sure that I could never reattach them. I'm sorry, I just made all that up, sorry. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that's a very, very scary thing to see. This story is credited to Blue Tidal, Tidal. I like this story. But if I could propose an alternate theory, so the first thing I thought when he said the man was dancing and all this stuff and he's all intense and stuff was like that scene in the movie Footloose when Kevin Bacon is just like all pissed off and he's been drinking cheap beer and smoking bad cigarettes and he's like running around just like in some blue jeans with his shirt off and stuff, you know, and his nipples are hard. Like his nipples are really hard, aren't they? And that Kenny Loggins song is playing because anytime there's like a really, really kind of homoerotic thing that happens in an 80s movie, there's usually a Kenny Loggins song playing. And Kevin Bacon, he's just dancing his mother trucking keister off. You know, he's like going for it. And he's like drunk and in that mode where he's probably, it's like the same thing that happens to religious people when they handle snakes or they speak in tongues and things like that. And I think honestly what happened is that this happened when Kevin Bacon went off the rails in the movie Footloose. That was Kevin Bacon from Footloose, just this after that scene, which you don't see, right? Like when he's still just like bombed out of his mind on like Coors Light and like GPC cigarettes, you know, and he's got his like Beetle and he's like in his like skin tight, you know, cut off jeans with no shirt on, and he's just, you know, in his head is all heaven helps the man who, and yeah, so he ran up to that dude and he was like, you know, dancing and shit because he just. Footloose, y'all. You never seen Footloose? Seriously.